Hello and welcome. You are listening to the mini book podcast, Proof of Christ Edition. We are so glad you've decided to join us today. We have a really specific and, I think, really powerful goal for this session. And it all centers around one single, very striking book that, well, it tackles some of the biggest questions you can possibly ask.
That's right. It's a pleasure to be here. We are looking at Does God Exist? And 51 other compelling questions about God and the Bible. It's written by Bobby Conway.
And before we get going, I do have to be completely transparent with everyone listening.
Yeah.
We want to be really clear. The voices you are hearing right now, they come from AI, or artificial intelligence. But the content, the analysis, all the insights, that comes straight from the book itself. We're just the delivery system for Bobby Conway's work.
Exactly. And we feel this is a great way to learn why Jesus Christ is God. That is the ultimate destination here. But we also need to be clear about something else. We're here to guide you through this material, but, nothing replaces the original source.
100%. We thank you for listening. And please consider subscribing for future content. We have a lot more to cover in the episodes to come. But after hearing this podcast, we would strongly encourage you to go out and purchase this book and support the author.
Oh, absolutely. Bobby Conway has put a massive amount of work into this, and, buying the book is really the best way to say thank you.
Plus, it's designed as a toolkit, right? It's not just a story you read once.
Exactly. It tackles 52 distinct questions, so having it on your shelf to reference is just incredibly valuable.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at a book with this huge question mark on the cover, and it's explicitly asking, does God exist? But our listeners, they specifically asked for the proof of Christ. So help me build the bridge here. How does a book about the existence of God in general lead us to the specific claim that a carpenter from Nazareth was the creator of the universe?
That is the crucial progression of the book. It's really built like a funnel. You start with the widest possible question, is there a God at all? Because if the answer is no, then Jesus was just a man. Maybe a wise one, maybe a delusional one, but just a man. But if the answer is yes, a creator exists, then you have to ask the next question, has that creator communicated?
Which brings us to the Bible.
Exactly. And if the Bible is that reliable communication, well, then we have to deal with the central figure of that entire book, who is Jesus. So Conway builds this cumulative case. He doesn't ask you to believe in Jesus in a vacuum. He asks you to follow the evidence, from nature to history, right to the person of Christ.
Speaking of evidence, I noticed something on the cover that I think really sets the tone for this whole thing. The foreword is written by J. Warner Wallace.
Yes, the author of Cold Case Christianity.
Right. And for those who don't know, Wallace was a cold case homicide detective. He wasn't a pastor. He was an atheist who used, forensic science to solve murders from decades ago. So why is he introducing this book?
Because Bobby Conway applies that same forensic mindset to theology. This isn't about, blind faith or warm, fuzzy feelings. This is about looking at the crime scene of the universe and the historical record of the first century. Wallace's endorsement is a signal. It's telling you we are going to look at evidence that would hold up in a court of law.
Okay, so let's look at that evidence. Let's start at the top of the funnel. Like you said, the book asks, does God exist? What's the actual argument there? Because, a lot of people think science has already buried that question.
Conway actually argues the complete opposite, that science has resurrected the question. He points to what's often called the cosmological argument. It sounds complex, but it's really, really simple. Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Okay, that makes sense. If I see a ball rolling across the floor, I know someone kicked it.
Right. And for centuries, a lot of scientists thought the universe was eternal, that it had always just been there. But modern astrophysics, specifically the Big Bang theory, it proved that the universe had a beginning. Space, time, and matter, they all came into existence at a specific moment.
So if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a cause.
Precisely. And that cause must be outside of space, time, and matter. It has to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and, incredibly powerful to create a universe out of nothing.
That does sound a lot like God.
It's a pretty good description.
But couldn't it just be some kind of random accident? Like a cosmic roll of the dice?
That's where Conway brings in the fine-tuning argument. And honestly, this is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence we have today. Imagine a soundboard with 50 different dials, all set to a super precise frequency. The universe runs on these specific physical constants: the force of gravity, the rate of expansion, the electromagnetic force.
And if you move those dials even a little bit?
If you change the force of gravity by even a fraction of a percent, a hair's breadth on the dial, The universe would either collapse back on itself or fly apart so fast that no stars or planets could ever form. The mathematical odds of all these constants being set exactly right for life to exist just by accident they're astronomically low. It really points to a fine-tuner.
Okay, I'm with you so far. There's a creator, a mind behind the universe. But that's still just deism, right? The watchmaker idea. God winds up the universe and then walks away.
Yeah.
How do we get from the fine-tuner to the God of the Bible?
This is where we shift from the telescope to the microscope. We move from looking at the stars to looking at the text. Remember, the subtitle of the book includes questions about the Bible. Conway argues that if there is a God, it just makes sense he would communicate, and the Bible claims to be that communication.
Okay, but hold on. There are a dozen holy books out there. Why should we trust this one? This is a huge sticking point for a lot of people. They see the Bible as a game of telephone, written hundreds of years later, changed by monks, riddled with errors.
That's the popular cultural narrative, yeah. But Conway completely dismantles it using what we call textual criticism.
Break that down for us. What is textual criticism?
It's basically the science of determining how accurate an ancient document is. You look at two main things: the number of copies you have and the time gap between the actual events and when they were written down. Let's compare the Bible to something like, say, the biography of Alexander the Great.
Okay, Alexander, huge historical figure. We know all about him.
We do, but the earliest biographies we have of Alexander were written about 400 years after he died.
400 years, wow. That's a long time for legends and myths to grow.
It is. And yet, historians trust those accounts. Now, look at the New Testament. We have manuscripts copies of the text that date back to within decades of the events themselves.
Decades.
Decades. And we have thousands of them. Over 5,800 Greek manuscripts alone.
Wait, 5,800. How does that compare to other ancient books?
It's not even in the same league. For Caesar's Gallic Wars, we have maybe 10 good manuscripts. For Plato, maybe 7. The New Testament has more manuscript evidence than any other 10 pieces of ancient literature combined.
So if we say the Bible is unreliable because it's been changed, then logically we'd have to throw out everything we know about Caesar, Plato, and Aristotle too.
Exactly. The whole telephone game theory just doesn't hold up when you look at the physical evidence. We can cross-reference these thousands of copies and see that the message has remained incredibly stable.
Okay, so we have a text that hasn't been changed. But just because the text is accurate doesn't mean the story inside is true, right? I can have a perfectly preserved copy of Harry Potter, but it's still fiction. How do we know the writers weren't just making it all up?
This is one of my favorite parts of the book's argument. It uses something called the criterion of embarrassment.
That sounds awkward.
It is. Think about it, though. If you were inventing a new religion and you wanted to be the hero of your own story, how would you write yourself?
I'd probably be brave and smart, and I'd understand everything my leader said.
Right. You'd make yourself look good. But look at the Gospels. How are the disciples portrayed?
Honestly, they come off as kind of dense. They're constantly misunderstanding Jesus. Peter, who's supposed to be the leader, denies he even knows Jesus to a servant girl. They run away when things get tough.
Exactly. They are cowardly, they are doubting, they are slow-witted. If they were fabricating this whole story just to gain power, why on earth would they include those details? The fact that they included embarrassing things about themselves suggests they were committed to recording what actually happened, even when it made them look bad.
It's the ring of truth. Liars usually polish the edges.
Correct. So now we have a universe that requires a creator and a historical document that is reliable and honest. Now we arrive at the core of your listener's request, the proof of Christ.
The moment of truth. Because in this reliable document, Jesus makes, some massive claims.
He really does. And Conway doesn't shy away from this at all. The central question is, who did Jesus think he was? There's this modern idea that Jesus was just a nice moral teacher, a guru who said, hey, love your neighbor, and then his followers later exaggerated him into a god.
The legend theory.
Right. But the text just doesn't allow for that. In the Gospels, Jesus does things that only God can do. He forgives sins, not just sins against him, but sins in general.
Which is a huge deal. If I punch you, you can forgive me.
Right.
But if I punch you and a third guy walks up and says, I forgive you, that's just weird. Unless that third guy is God, the one all sins are ultimately against.
Exactly. He also accepts worship. In Jewish culture, worshiping a man was blasphemy, the worst sin, yet Jesus accepts it. And he makes these direct claims like, before Abraham was, I am. He's applying the holy name of God to himself.
So we're back to that famous trilemma.
Yes. If Jesus claimed to be God, he was either lying, he was crazy, or he was telling the truth. Liar, lunatic, or lord.
And the liar option doesn't really fit because, well, would a liar teach the world's highest moral standard and then die for it?
People will die for lies they think are true, but people don't die for lies they know are false. And that brings us to the ultimate proof, the resurrection. This is the linchpin of the entire Christian faith and the focus of the proof of Christ.
And this is the part that's hardest for the modern mind to wrap around. I mean, dead people stay dead.
Usually, yes. But if God exists, that was point one, then miracles are at least possible. The real question is there evidence for this specific miracle? Conway points to what's called the minimal facts approach. These are facts that even skeptical, non-Christian historians admit are true.
Wait, even skeptics agree on these. What are they?
Okay, so fact 1, Jesus died by crucifixion. Fact 2, his tomb was found empty 3 days later. Fact 3, his disciples believed they saw him alive. And fact 4, the church exploded in growth right there in Jerusalem, the very city where he was killed.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second. Couldn't the disciples have just stolen the body?
That was the earliest theory thrown around. But think about the psychology. We just established they were cowards who ran away when he was arrested. Now, suddenly, 3 days later, they're willing to march into the face of the Roman Empire and the Jewish leaders and say, he is alive. And then almost all of them were tortured and executed for that belief.
Right, going back to what you said earlier, liars don't die for what they know is a lie. If they stole the body, they knew it was a lie.
Exactly. You might die for a delusion, but you don't die for a hoax that you invented. And then there's the enemy testimony. The Jewish leaders admitted the tomb was empty. They claimed the disciples stole the body, but in doing that, they admitted the body was gone.
So if the body was still there, they would have just rolled away the stone, shown everyone the corpse, and Christianity would have ended on day one.
That's it. The whole thing would have been over.
That's a really strong point. The silence of the enemy is itself a form of evidence.
It is. So when you stack it all up, the philosophical need for a creator, the historical reliability of the Bible, the direct claims of Jesus, and the forensic evidence for the resurrection, you have a really compelling case. You have proof that isn't just blind hope. It's actually grounded in reality.
It really is a toolkit. I mean, we've covered maybe 3 or 4 major concepts here, but the book has 51 of these questions.
And that's why the scope is so important. It's a cumulative case. Maybe the cosmological argument doesn't convince you on its own. Okay, but then you look at the information in DNA code. Maybe that doesn't do it. But then you look at the Old Testament prophecies that Jesus fulfilled.
Prophecy is another huge one we didn't even get to touch on. The odds of one man fulfilling all those predictions by accident.
Astronomical. And Conway covers that. The point is, the proof of Christ isn't one single magic bullet. It's a mountain of evidence. It's like a braided cord. You might be able to break one strand, but you can't break them all together.
I really appreciate how this book respects the intelligence of the reader. It assumes you can handle the data. It doesn't dumb it down. It breaks it down.
That's such a key distinction. It breaks these complex topics like theodicy, the problem of evil, or soteriology, the study of salvation, down into these bite-sized questions, but it retains the intellectual weight. It's perfect for the learner who wants to understand the why, not just the what.
So if we zoom out, what does all this mean for you, the listener? We've looked at the logic. We've looked at the history.
It means that faith is a rational step. There's a big difference between blind faith and trust. Blind faith is believing something despite the evidence. Trust is believing something because of the evidence. When you step onto an airplane, you trust the pilot and the engineers. You don't know them personally, but the evidence of their training and the plane's history gives you a reason to trust.
And this book is providing the flight record.
Exactly. It's showing you that the Christian worldview has a track record. It matches reality. It explains why there is something rather than nothing. It explains why human beings have intrinsic value. And it offers a solution to the human condition through Jesus.
And that's where the proof becomes personal. Because if Jesus really is God, as the evidence suggests, then his words matter. His offer of salvation matters.
It changes everything. It means you aren't an accident. You were made on purpose, for a purpose. And the creator of the universe went to extraordinary lengths, entering history, suffering, and rising again to restore a relationship with you. That is the ultimate why behind this entire book.
It's heavy stuff, but it's also incredibly exciting. It takes that question mark on the cover and turns it into an exclamation point.
I like that. From inquiry to certainty, yeah.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground today, from the Big Bang all the way to the empty tomb. But as we always say, we are just scratching the surface here.
We really are. We tackled the big themes, but Bobby Conway, he deals with the specifics. He answers questions about suffering, about other religions, about supposed inconsistencies in the Bible.
Which is why we have to reiterate, this podcast is just the introduction.
The real exploration happens when you read it yourself.
So here's our request to you. If this conversation sparked any curiosity at all, if you want to see the full 51 questions and how they all fit together, please go out and purchase Does God Exist? By Bobby Conway.
Support the author. This kind of scholarship takes years of effort, and having this book on your shelf is like having a pocket expert you can consult whenever you or your kids or your friends have one of those tough questions.
And remember, while our voices are AI, the arguments we presented today are real. They are tested. They are the content of the book.
We're just here to help you navigate it.
We also want to ask you to subscribe. If you found this Proof of Christ edition helpful, please hit that subscribe button. We have more books to explore, more proofs to uncover, and we really don't want you to miss out.
And please tell others about this podcast. There are a lot of people out there who think faith is anti-intellectual. Share this with them. Let them know there are real answers.
And finally, we want your input. Suggest in the comments books that you would like to hear in future episodes. Is there a classic apologetics book you love? A new title we should look at? Let us know.
We build this show for you, so your suggestions really do drive our content.
Thank you so much for subscribing and listening. Thank you for being willing to look at the evidence.
Keep asking questions.
Goodbye, everyone.